Okay, this is your FRQ Helpful Hint video for FRQ 2019 6 a.m.B. signed Friday 8/23. This one's actually our FRQ from last year's AP test. So let's go ahead and take a look at it. So first of all, it says the functions f, g, and h are twice differentiable. What that means is all of these functions, you can find the first derivative if you want to, and you can also find the second derivative of these functions. That's what it means to be twice differentiable. I don't think that that really matters, though, for part A or B, but I just thought I'd talk about it. Now, what does matter is that g of 2 is equal to h of 2, which equals to 4. Now, remember, when you plug a number into your function, the output is a y value. So what that means is that for the g function, it has the point 2, 4, and the h function has the point 2, 4. In other words, those two functions are crossing at that point. Then it tells us that the line y equals blah blah is tangent. So this is the tangent line at x equals 2. And it's also the tangent line to the graph of h at x equals 2. So here's how we can kind of imagine this. We have a graph, right? And here's x equals 2. So let's just say that this is the graph of g, and I'm just making this up. And this is going to be the graph of h, we'll say. And then this is the point that they're touching at, which would be over 2 and up 4, right? And then there's a tangent line that touches both of those points, and this is the equation of that tangent line. Okay? Well, so here's your helpful hints. Part A, find h prime of 2. Well, what does that mean? That's the instantaneous rate of change of h when x equals 2, right? Well, what's another word for the instantaneous rate of change of h at x equals 2? That is the slope of h at x equals 2, right? Well, something you guys should be aware of is that the slope of this function at x equals 2 is the slope of that tangent line. Do you know the slope of this tangent line? I'll leave it at that for that one. For part B, they give you a new function. They call it a. And a is this funny looking thing. And they want you to find a prime of 2. So what I'll do is I'll give you an example that's kind of similar to that. And I'll let you guys figure out this actual one. So let's say that I had 7x to the 4th power times g of x. And I'm going to call that a new function, h, right? And I want to find h prime of 2, let's say. All right, well, to find h prime of 2, I need to find the derivative of this. Now, we've learned quite a few rules, so I'm going to recite a few to you. Okay, we've learned the power rule. We've learned constant rule. We've learned product rule. We've learned quotient rule. We've learned chain rule. Looking at this, what rule do you think we're going to use? If you said power rule, you're right. That's going to come into play. But you also should have said product rule. Don't we have two things being multiplied together here? Right? So the product rule would look like this. Blank, blank, plus blank, blank. Right? So we'll call this A, we'll call this B. A, B, A, B. Prime one, prime the other. Remember that? So A prime is going to be 28x to the 3rd. B stays the same. A is going to be 7x to the 4th. B prime is going to be g prime of x. And since we're plugging in 2, what we're going to do is we're going to go through and we're going to replace all those x's with 2's. And from there, we should be able to answer the question just fine. Okay, so that's how you guys are going to hit up this FRQ. All right? That being said, I'll leave the rest to you on that one, and we'll look at the next one. Okay, so this is your helpful hint video for FRQ 2012 question 4, or parts A and B. This one's actually pretty straightforward. There's really nothing too fancy about this one. The first thing they want you to do is they want you to find f prime of x. So you want to remember that you're going to want to rewrite that as a fraction, right? So that you can find your derivative. Okay. So from there, I'm going to go ahead and let you guys find the derivative. It will be a chain rule, though, stuff that we've been talking about this week. The next thing is you guys also know how to find the equation of a tangent line. That's not too bad. So you need to find your slope. So what you're going to do is you're going to take the derivative that you get from this, part A, and you're going to plug into it the -3 to find out what the slope is. And then you're going to also plug -3 into the original equation as well. You're going to figure out what that is. I guess the only thing that maybe you guys might need help with is after you get the derivative here, how do you simplify it? So let me come up with an example for you guys to kind of help you out. Okay, so for example, we have this, right? So the first thing we want to do is rewrite this so that it's not a square root anymore. 2x to the 1/2 power, and then we want to find the derivative of that. So we take the 1/2, we put it in the front, right? We take 1 off of the power, that makes it -1/2, and then we do the derivative of the inside, right? So let's go ahead and simplify this a little bit. It's asking us to find f prime of 8. Two times 8. It's not 20, it's 2 times 8. Okay. Well, 2 times 8 is 16. And this is a non-calculator question, as are all of them in this week. So none of these should you be using your calculator on. This should all be done by hand. So how do we simplify this is what I'm thinking might be your issue. Well, first of all, you have to remember that a negative exponent means that it's really a reciprocal. So I'm going to change this 16 to the -1/2 to 1/16 to the +1/2. And then another thing you have to be aware of is the fact that 16 to the 1/2 power really means the square root of 16. And then from there, I imagine you guys would be fine. So we have 1/2 times 1/16 is 1/4 times 2. Okay, well the 2's cancel and you're basically left with a 4th. So that's an example of how to simplify an expression when you have a negative fraction exponent there. Okay. All right, so that's the end of that one. We'll also go ahead and take a look at our last FRQ that you've been assigned for this weekend. FRQ 2014, question 3, part D. Okay, so this is actually a lot like a table problem. It's just that instead of a table, we have a graph. So we have a graph here of f, and they're telling us about a function. This is just an example, by the way, to help you do your problem. So I'm giving you a graph of f, and then I'm telling you of another function over here, which is h, and h is f of x squared. Now, if I were to ask you guys what is find h prime of 2, how would you do that? Well, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take the derivative of this. Okay, now this is a chain rule, right? We have an inside function is x squared, and our outside function is f. So the derivative of the outside will be f prime, right? Don't change the inside. So derivative of the outside, don't change the inside. Then multiply it by the derivative of the inside. The derivative of x squared is 2x. And then we go ahead and we plug in the 2, right? Okay, so what we end up with there is f prime of 4 times 4. Now, this means the slope of f at x equals 4. So we're going to look at our table over here. We're going to find where x equals 4. That's right here. And we're going to ask ourselves, well, what's the slope? Well, it looks like it goes over 2 and up 3 there. So that's a slope of 3 over 2, but it's going down, right? So it's a negative 3, so down 3, right 2. So the slope is negative 3/2. So that means f prime of 4, the slope of f at x equals 4 is negative 3/2. So I'm going to replace this with negative 3 over 2. And then we still have our times 4 over here, which if you simplify this, you get negative 12 over 6, which would be, negative 12 over 2, which is negative 6 is the final answer. And so that's what we're looking for there on this FRQ. So basically, you have to take the derivative using the chain rule, plug in the x value they give you, and then use the graph to find the values that you need. Okay? And that pretty much closes out that FRQ. Have a good weekend.